Hello guys, welcome back to Brin Darcy. My name is Brin, and as you might know, this is my channel. I used to share content about my life and studies at the Australian National University, but I have since moved on a little bit and I have actually moved to Spain. So after living in the UK for almost a year, we've decided to come back to Spain, which was always on the cards, I suppose. And now we're living here in Seville. So my channel is all about my life here in Spain, and today I'm going to answer some questions that I received on my Instagram, which you can follow up here if you're interested. I asked some questions to my followers, and these are some of the common ones that I got. Now, in saying this, I'm not going to answer every question because I'm not confident that I can answer every question. And I'm also not going to share any of the names. So all of the questions are anonymous. If you asked a question, don't worry. I've got my laptop just here to the side, which is why you might see me looking like this quite frequently. And that's because I can't remember all of the questions. And I think I will make another video about some of the more specific questions about things like different types of visas or housing or opening bank accounts, things like that. So this is just going to be a video about generally living in Spain as an expat. So let's move on to the video. So number one is, what type of visa are you on in Spain? Now this is a bit difficult because currently my papers are processing, so I don't have an actual visa yet, but in the coming months, fingers crossed, if everything works out fine and there's no problems, I will be here as the partner of a Spanish citizen. So I'm here on it's called a tarjeta de comunitaria, I think. It's like a community healthcare card. I can't remember the name of it exactly, but that's the visa that I have applied for. Second question, how important is it to know how to speak Spanish to live in Spain? I think that this question depends on where you live. If you're living in quite an international city, quite a large city like Madrid or Barcelona, it's definitely easier to get by without speaking Spanish. However, if you're living in the south of Spain, or you're living in a smaller city or a rural community, you need to know at least a basic level of Spanish to be able to live your life. Do you need to be fluent? Of course not. No one is expecting that everyone is fluent in Spanish. However, to be able to communicate with other people, you do need to know some Spanish. Here in Seville, it's a bit different because a lot of young people know English, for example, and that's common across Spain. A lot of young people know English, but if you need something in a shop, for example, you need to be able to speak Spanish. To get your visa, you need to be able to speak Spanish or have a lawyer who can speak Spanish for you. To make Spanish friends, chances are you need to speak Spanish because not everyone speaks English well enough to be able to, have a social life with you. The next question was, where should I move if I only speak English? And to answer that, I would say a big city like Madrid or Barcelona is definitely a better decision than moving somewhere that's more closed or more rural. So in Seville, although it's quite a touristic destination, there's still a bit of a culture of being not unaccepting, but less willing to invite foreign people into close social circles, and that's definitely compounded if you only speak English. People have also asked, how can I improve my Spanish if I want to move to Spain? People have also asked, how can I improve my Spanish if I want to move to Spain? I think that's a really good question, and I think that depends on you as a person. But like with English, there are a few things I recommend. Number one, I think that taking Spanish lessons is obviously a really good decision. A teacher can help you personally to move toward your goal, whatever that may be in speaking Spanish. Secondly, having a textbook, reading Spanish stories and Spanish books. I think that watching television shows is good, and listening to podcasts is also really good as well. I think that when you're living in Spain, your Spanish improves naturally anyway, just simply by being around people who speak Spanish all the time, sheer exposure. But I do think that having a good foundation before you come to Spain is quite important. The next group of questions I made was about cost of living. So someone asked, what is the cost of living like in Spain after COVID? I would say that things are now a bit more expensive than before. When we holidayed here before, it was much cheaper. Flights were much cheaper. Food was much cheaper. I'm not sure about things like rent or... Sorry, there was a bug on my foot. I'm not sure about things like rent or bills or utilities. I'm not sure what they cost before, but I think that cost of living has increased. However, in saying that, if you have a British income or an American income or an Australian income and you're working remotely and you're living in Spain, the cost of living will seem minimal compared to what it's like back home. I think that for Spanish people, the cost of living has increased, but that's because Spanish salaries are a lot lower. But if you've got a foreign salary and you're living in Spain, the cost of living is quite low. Also, as an extension to that question, the cost of living does vary a bit depending on where you are. If you're in a city, it's obviously a bit more expensive. If you're in a more regional center, the cost of living is lower and you definitely notice it. For example, in my partner's home city, a coffee is €1. Here in Seville, a coffee might be €2 or €1.50 or €1.80, sort of around that mark. And obviously that depends on which bars you go to, what areas you live in, etc., etc. But in general, I think that it's a little bit more expensive in the cities. I will make a video in the future about the exact cost of living. Obviously, like my video that I made about Canberra, I won't share down to the exact number what we're paying in rent or utilities or whatever, but I will share a general cost of living video if that's what you're interested in. Then there were some questions about things like safety and also things like assimilating to a new culture or finding friends or what life is like just in general, how difficult it is to find houses, what are my long-term plans, why did we choose Spain, all of these sort of general questions I'm going to lump into one section. The first question is, why did I choose to move to Spain? And if you followed my channel for a while, you might know that my partner is Spanish. We moved back here because he wanted to be closer to his family, and a job opportunity came up, he took it, and we're back here. Next question, what's my long-term plan? Moving on, what's my long-term plan? I'm not really sure. I think that it's really good to make goals for yourself and plans for the future. However, I think that those plans can change quite quickly, and it's more important to have goals about things like maybe your career or, I don't know, learning something, studying something, rather than having goals about where you want to live. So where do I want to live in the future? I don't know. I'm not going to commit myself to one location. However, I think that for the next year at least, I see myself living in Spain and not much changing about our situation here. So yeah, that's how I would answer that question. That's a bit of a difficult one at the moment. Someone asked, is there any way we can meet other expats if we move to Spain? Yes, I have not got many expat friends in Spain. That's just because I'm lucky enough to have a small group of Spanish people who I knew before, a small group of Spanish friends. And so I feel quite supported in that, I suppose. I'm quite lucky to have that. But I know other people sometimes like to have a group of friends who are from their country. It's good to be able to talk to people who are from where you're from, can feel very supportive, etc., etc. So I would say to meet expats, in Seville specifically, I'll talk about Seville specifically because otherwise there's too many other places and options and everything. So for Seville specifically, we have a Facebook group where there's a big expat community. There's a group for women, an expat group for women. There are other groups for expats with kids, family groups that meet up every few weeks, etc. So there are a lot of ways that expats meet up, come together, share things, build a community. I would say look online, that's the first place to go. Maybe if you have children, an English speaking school would be a good suggestion. I think that you can meet other expats in Spanish classes, for example. If you're taking Spanish classes in the city that you move to, that could be a good option, because I don't think there'll be many Spanish natives in the class. What else would I say? I think those are probably my top 3 tips for meeting expats. In terms of local people, this again depends on what city you're moving to. I think that the difficult thing about living in the south of Spain can be that sometimes people already have very established friendship groups. This is normal anyway, I think, in adulthood, that people have, you know, you've already got your friends from school or university or whatever, and people don't feel like they need to make more friends in adulthood. However, and also people are busy, you know, people have got things going on, they don't have time for new friendships. I think though that it's, in the south of Spain especially, it's especially prominent, I guess, that people are very happy to be with a friend group that they've had since primary school or from the town that they grew up in. Or sometimes they'll branch out and have friends from university. People will go for drinks with their work colleagues, but they won't really be their friends. Like, they're not close friends, you know? People will go out with them, but the concept of friendship here is a different concept. It's like you have to have been friends since birth, in a way, which then makes it incredibly difficult as an expat to come into those groups. And like I said before, I'm very lucky that when I lived overseas, I met people who lived here. My partner's from here, so I get to meet a lot of his friends. And I do have the chance to build more of a community than other expats would have the chance to build. But I do think that sometimes people move overseas expecting that it's going to be really easy, expecting you're going to be able to make friends and have a great social life. And I think that while that can be true, no matter what country you move to, no matter how old you are, no matter when you move, no matter whether you want to make expat friends or local friends, it's very difficult to build strong connections when you move overseas. I think that if you're lucky enough to have a partner and friends who are already there, that's great. If not, it can be very lonely at times. Someone asked, what is the biggest cultural difference that you have seen once you've moved to Spain? There are a few. I think I'll make a quick list. I'll make a brief list, and then if you're interested in hearing more, I'll make another video about it. I would say obeying the law / driving, people don't do it very well. Number 2, the time of dinner and the time of meals. People have meals really, really late in the evening. 3, people will go out any night of the week. Like, you can go out till 1 a.m. on a Wednesday, and that's not a weird thing to do. That would be weird in other countries. Number 3, people often travel back to their hometown on the weekend, like every weekend. Number 4, there's a religious holiday every week. Maybe number 5. Next one. There's a religious holiday every week. In the supermarkets, you have to get food with plastic gloves, which I think is quite wasteful. All of the shops close at midday. This is not something I find weird now because I've been to Spain a lot before this, but if you're moving to Spain, you will find this really weird. A lot of the shops will close in the middle of the day. Okay, so I would say that's what I found to be the weirdest cultural differences. If you'd like me to make, if you'd like for me to make a video on cultural differences in the future, leave a comment below, like this video, I will make one. I'm happy to do that and expand on all of those things. The last question that I'm going to answer today is it safe to live in Spain? And I think that depends. Your perception of safety obviously is different depending on where you come from. My perception of safety as an Australian person is wildly different to the perception of safety of an American or British person. In Australia, I'm unlikely to encounter any particularly dangerous situations aside from animals and drunk drivers. I would say that is the most risky my life will get. Obviously, in other countries where there's other risks present, maybe you have a different perception of risk, and that's fine. I would say here in Spain, life is quite safe, especially in a city like Seville, where it's a very communal city, very close together. People know their neighbours, you speak to your neighbours. When you move into the building, people will say hello to you, they'll say, how are you, blah, blah, blah. And there is a real sense of community, which I think makes things safer. However, bad things happen here. Bad things that don't happen as often in Australia happen here more often. Of course, there are more people. With more people, there's more room for people who decide to do terrible things. I think that Seville is a good city if you are concerned about safety. I've never felt deeply unsafe in Seville. No one has ever harassed me or assaulted me. The worst encounters I've had are with people who are being rude to me, maybe because I'm not from Spain, but that's it. I haven't had anyone who's made me feel really unsafe. I think that there are times, just like when I lived in the UK, where there's maybe a situation that I go, okay, I'm not going to put myself near that situation because I think that that's not a great place to be, and I'll leave. But the same thing happened in the UK. And I would say in general, I feel safer here than in the UK. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed hearing the answers, I suppose, to these questions about living in Spain. And if you're interested in moving to Spain, or you'd like to know more information about what it's like to live as an expat, just leave a comment on the video below. I'll respond to you. If you have a question that could be made into a video, I'm happy to make it into a video for you. So that's all for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.